All right, I don't want to be doing this right now. I got other things to do, but my whole day got screwed up. So I'm going to go ahead and rebuild, repack this coaster brake. I'm going to just use rudimentary tools that you should own. It's kind of a how-to, but you know, this is not my forte. How-to videos. That's not my thing, man. So I'm going to try to do the best I can. This is really about. It's really going to be more about tips. I'm going to give you tips to use while you're doing this. The number one tip is to know where your tools are and always put them back in the same place so you don't find yourself doing what you see me doing right now, which is extremely frustrating. All right, let's see here. All right, screw it. We're going to use an adjustable wrench. Crescent wrench. 15 millimeter bolts on this wheel. This is a more modern than the old Schwinn wheels that came on the bikes. They had something like a 13/16 nut on the rear wheels. This wheel came off of a cruiser that I bought in New Jersey. I forget what it was. It was a decent quality bike, but the bike was pretty well rusted. And I bought it from some friends of mine inexpensively. I just wanted a few of the parts off. I think it had a decent Shimano stem on it and probably a set of bars, and it had this wheel set. I already repacked the front hub. I took that all apart, cleaned it up, repacked that, and it was what we call free balling. So it had loose ball bearings in there. You have to be careful when you take the wheel apart, which is something you're going to learn right now. Now, a little tip for you right here is, you know, use a pair of scissors or not, but set yourself up a little work surface because you're going to, there's a lot of grease involved here. And you don't want to make your surface overly filthy. So get yourself out a paper bag, and now you can lay all your parts out. It also helps to not have all this clutter around. I'm using, for the grease, I'll be using Lucas Red and Tacky. That's pretty much empty. It's nice if you could find it in that container. However, a lot of the time you're going to find it in this, and this is designed to work with a grease gun. If you get one of these. If this empties and then you can't find this again, buy these, slice them open, take all the grease out and put it back in this container because it's a lot more efficient to work with. Number one tip. Right there. All right. Now on this wheel, you may remember that's a Schwinn Varsity frame. It's spaced for a hub. So I had to stack 4 washers on either side of this. We're going to take these off right now. I prefer to work all from one side when I take apart and reassemble a coaster brake, and this is what you should be doing as well. You really want to work all from this one side. Pull everything apart from here, pull your axle out from this side. However, there are times when you're loosening this up and this is frozen and this part starts coming apart. If that happens, you want to stop, tighten it back up, and make sure you go ahead and get some accurate measurements from the end of this nut to the end of your axle on both sides. Because if you have to disassemble that full axle, again, you really want to avoid having to do that. Just my opinion. For a full breakdown, you probably should, because then you can get these nuts off and everything, but it's going to come off enough. Don't worry, you'll see. This is kind of like the quick man's way to do it. I'm not a pro bike shop, all right? At any rate, let's give this a shot right quick. I know I got another adjustable wrench around here. Or a crescent wrench. I just grew up calling them adjustable wrenches because you can adjust them. Let's try to get a little tighter in on this for you. First thing is, you've got a little... Yeah, this ain't going to work. I'm too cluttered. Too cluttered. I got stuff up here for other projects. I can't, move around too much. By the way, if you saw this and you were wondering what this is for, when I got to knock the bearing race onto a fork, this is what I use. So it just goes over the race and I whack it down and it seats on the top of the fork. It's just a piece of pipe, plumbing pipe. All right, so your first step here is going to be removing this cog, and what's going on there is you need a tiny screwdriver, and it's a spring clip in here, and there's these little, I have to put some gloves on, I suppose. So it's another thing you're going to want. I like these what is this? How do you pronounce this? Nitrile gloves at, what is it? Harbor Freight. It's like the best deal you could find. I mean, back when we had that pandemic thing going on, you couldn't find rubber gloves and the prices went through the roof. These were still reasonable, and these are pretty tough gloves. Your hands are going to sweat in them, so every once in a while you got to pop them off and dry them off and then put another set on. But this is a messy job, so, and for you to see what I want to show you, I'm going to be doing a few extra steps here that I normally would not do. Like, I wouldn't go through this trouble right here, but I want you to see what's going on. This is 4/0 steel wool. It's kind of my go-to here with all my bike work. So if you take this off, use a screwdriver, scrape some crud off here. As you're going, it's going to make your life a little bit easier. Use a brass brush on this if you want, whatever it takes, but usually a little bit of this here. A little agitation, and you'll make it. It's not perfect right now. You're going to be cleaning all these parts individually the same way. But again, I'm just doing this so you can see what I want to show you. All right. Show this to you on camera here. There is a, I hope we can see this here. There's a steel spring clip right here, and there's these three little indentations. So you want to stick your screwdriver right in there and pry away to release that clip. There's a split in that clip somewhere. I don't want to bust that one. Get underneath there, and then you can just take a screwdriver and spin this around here, and boom. There's your spring clip. That's a piece of steel. Put that to the side. Now, number one tip. Right now, put your parts down as you remove them in the proper orientation. Right, that's the spring clip. This is your cog, your rear sprocket, and that was facing that way. Briefly, just want to explain that when I put this wheel in here, my chain line is perfect from this wheel to the front sprocket, and I'll show that to you when we put it back on at the end. Okay, now we're ready to start spinning nuts off. Some people will take a pipe like this and put it on here, which is perfectly acceptable. Let's go ahead and do that since I have the pipe. Real quick note on this. This is the Shimano CBE-110. I misspoke the other day when I talked about this bike. This is actually their good one. I think this is their top of the line coaster brake at that time. Let's hope that this spins off from this end. It typically does, and it does. That's awesome. And it has been a while. If this is free balled, these bearings are going to fall out on me, and that's going to be no fun. Typically, it's not. Typically, the bearings are in a steel race. If you want to... Oh, no. It is unscrewing from the other side. That's a bummer. All right. Okay. That is just how it is. What a bummer, man. I guess we're going to do this in real time. I'll probably pause this a little bit for you along the way. So, unfortunately, it's not cooperating. We have an outer nut here. We have the brake arm. We've got a assembly here. All right, this holds the brake arm. There's a dust cover. There's a bearing and a cone nut. That's all one unit right now. We'll take that apart in a bit. We're going to go ahead and put that down in line with those parts right there. We want to eyeball this and look. Inside here are these two brake shoes. This is the part that you grease the hell out of. Right here and all the bearings, but we'll get to that. I'm going to tip this over and let these fall out. And so this is the inner assembly here. All right, that's what goes inside that hub. And when you pedal backwards, it locks up the axle, and then this springs into action. There's a spring in here, and it forces this cone in, and that forces these shoes up against the outer wall on the inside of your brake. This is all just grease here. And you see there's a little shelf on here. All right, that goes to the outside. We'll go ahead and we're going to take these off. We're going to place them down like that. We're going to take this, we're going to pull this out. This is just your spring here. There's also a washer in here. Boom, that falls right out. Take this piece here, we're going to place it right there. So we're all in order. This is everything that came out of the inside of that hub. Have yourself a roll of paper towels when you do this. It'll make your life a lot easier. It's kind of interesting that I'm doing this because I got a call, text from a guy, or a comment asking me some questions on this. Now we're going to pull this out. We're going to place it down for the moment. We're going to reach in here. These are your bearings inside of a race. Place that down. That's it. This is totally disassembled. We're going to go over how I clean that in a moment. Okay, we're still in order here. This here slides out. This is threaded. And that's how that works. You see that? So you're cruising, you hit your rear brake, and it spins out. Boom. And when it spins out, it drives this in. And that little shelf right there is what forces the shoes up and into the inside of the hub. And that's what stops the bike. You'll understand all of this once you take it all apart. And then here, there's another set of bearings with the race. We're not going to take this apart because we know now that that's in the perfect spot. So we'll just assemble everything from the other side. So now it's just basic common sense. Let's first wipe everything down. So wipe all the grease off everything. And then what I do, I've got a plate here that I'm using today, but I like to use plastic. It's a little bit better. And what I'll do is I'll spray down all the parts on there. For you, we'll do it individually, and I might not show it all because I know the order of these parts. If you've never done this before and it's your first time, this is what you want to do. So bam. We have the spring clip, the sprocket. In this case, we have the axle, which has the dust cover, cone nut, and outer nut all attached to it that do not spin off, so we'll leave it on there. We have the first set of bearings that go inside of this. I don't know what this is called, but it's a major part of the mechanism here. Oh, there's also a dust cover on this. It's stuck on there. There we go. You always want to remember that. And this could go out here. It doesn't matter. This goes on before you put the sprocket. We have your inner set of bearings that fit on there. And then we get to the internals. Right here is what goes on inside. Remember that threads onto there. Now we got your outside part here. Again, the bearing just fell out. There's another set of bearings here in a race. And this whole mucky thing here. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a shot of this real quick. And then I'm going to clean up the parts. And then I'll come back to you, all right? Just give me a moment here. I got to wipe the grease off the gloves so I can touch the camera, which is my phone. You know how this is. You know how this goes. You will go through a lot of paper towels, so you know, there's some of you out there going, why are you using towels? You're just ruining the environment. I don't know what to tell you, sister. Yeah, and I just referred to you as sister because those are the kind of people, you know. Even if it's a man saying that. I'm screwing with you. Lighten up. So again, all these parts are laying out there in the order they came off. Here's your outer nut. This is your brake arm. This is your dust cover and the part that locks onto the brake arm. If you look at the inside here, you'll see it fits like a key. First bearing. These are your brake shoes, your spring, your washer, internal. So you understand, right? All in the order. Alright, first step of cleaning is done. I just wiped all the grease off of these parts. Not super clean, but wiped them off. So they're easier to deal with and see and kind of inspect. You want to run your fingers over some of these parts, make sure there's no cracks or anything. These are all going to be reusable. The other nice thing about this is you saw that black grease in there. And if you got the black grease, that's okay. You can just wipe these clean. You don't have to get them super perfect because that is fine. If you open this up and there's almost no grease and it's rusty or something, well, now you got more work to do where you really got to get in here with the steel wool and everything else and scrape and clean and get all the muck off. But because this was already been greased, we're in pretty good shape now. I'm going to go ahead and clean these pretty well, some of these parts. Again, I'm just going to use this paper plate here. We'll start with the nut. We'll just give it a little bit of WD-40 and then just, you know, hit it with the 4-aught steel wool. It'll look, when I'm done with this, it'll look like brand new. If there's too much funk on it, just get your little screwdriver and just gently. You don't want to carve into the steel. You just want a piece of wood would work if it's not too funky. It's not a bad idea to use a piece of hardwood because you won't scratch the steel that way. But I'm barely touching this. And once I wipe this off with a paper towel. And look, if you've done this before, you'll just throw all these parts in something and spray them down and do them. But there you go. It's a nice clean nut on there. Everybody likes clean nuts. Nobody likes dirty nuts. I don't know about everybody, but I'm assuming women. Personally, I've never dealt with anybody else's nuts but my own. That's really on there. Let's get this piece of wood here. So you see that? That piece of wood, little sharp edge on there, makes quick work of that. And I know I'm not scratching up the metal. This is galvanized, I believe, this piece. So, you know, if you scratch it up with a screwdriver, you're just going to make it look like hell. And if you can avoid that, you should. I mean, if you care about how things look. This is my fast way of doing things. You know, I'm not, as you guys know, I'm not a pro here. This is the washer that was stuck on the outside here. So you have a nut and then a washer. It's one of those things you're going to learn as you're doing this. Some of these parts are stuck together. You'll see here there's more parts in front of you now, it looks like, because, you know, all this came apart as I was wiping it down. But as you separate them, again, if this is your first time doing it, you want to make sure that you put these parts back down in the order that they belong. Okay? I'm not going to do this on camera for you for all these parts. I'm just, you know, these preliminary end parts here because I think you can imagine the rest of it. You don't need to watch me do this. Although I had a song on the other day. I just put one up. Lou Rawls, The Natural Man. I hope you guys appreciated that. I don't make money, obviously, on those. I get flagged on Facebook for it. It doesn't, according to Facebook, according to YouTube, it doesn't hurt me. It doesn't put a strike on my channel. And sometimes they'll let it play. They'll have a deal with the estate. Like, I don't know, obviously Lou Rawls isn't alive anymore. But where they'll share. So they'll keep it monetized. You just never know. But I did that the other day with another song, and I had some funny comments. Like, I can't believe I just watched you sweep a floor. So I know there are some of you that will sit here and watch me clean every one of these parts. But I want to put the music back on and jam out while I'm cleaning these, because it's going to make my day go a little bit faster. This will get cleaned up a little bit more, but you know, there's your brake arm. Shimano CBE-110. That's a good one. All right, let me get back to this, and I'll be back to you momentarily. All right, so all the parts are clean enough. You know, it's not a show bike. You can see this plate here. Toss that aside. Now, you're going to eyeball your wheel, and the big hole on one side, smaller hole on the other. No more innuendo for you today. This here is your drive side. Okay, that's the side that the sprocket and everything is going to go. And remember, we took everything out from this side. The big side is the side that fits the shoes in and everything else. Okay, we're going to go ahead and assemble this dry. This is my #1 tip for you. All right, if you've never done this before, you want to assemble this dry at minimum 1 time. Minimum. You should probably do this a couple times. And we're going to go ahead, we're going to take the axle. We're not going to worry right now about the spring clip and the sprocket and the dust cover, because they go on last. We got our axle here. We got our cone nut. The bearing sits on that like this. This here goes in here, and that spins. See that? You want to eyeball everything and kind of make sure things are going to work. I'm going to lay that down for a moment. Because one of the things I want to jump to really quick is, you would have already done this step by now. You're cleaning your parts. As you clean your parts, you want to eyeball them. If you want to look at this cone, and you'll see these little reliefs that are cast or machined into that. Well, that should tell you that this here fits in there, right? When you go to assemble things, you want to make sure the 2 arms on this spring are going to fit in there. You want to think about that ahead of time. Right? Also, you'll see that there's a gap, there's like a machined section here. You want to make sure that these shoes are aligned to fit in there as well when you start putting things back together. All right, that's got to lock in there. Something to keep in mind when you start your assembly. And you should just be able to see that with your eyeballs. This is not brain surgery. But again, this is why you want to start putting things together dry. So I'm going to take this here. Now I know my next thing is the next set of bearings, and that goes on the outside here. Again, bearing, this main screw we'll call it, the next set of bearings, and that all goes inside the hub like that. That's how that's going to work right there. Now we can take this, we can flip it over, and we want to put the axle down so it doesn't fall out. We know that this here is going to go in, and this is threaded, so this threads onto that part down on the bottom. I can hold that in with my thumb. I can put this in here, and I can thread this in. It's pretty easy. It really will just go in there. I'm having a hard time. Let me explain it to you here so you can see it. Again, you kick back on your brake. When you kick back on your brake pedal, you're putting it this way, and you see how that drives in? Again, that's what forces the shoes in. Most people will do this other step first. Let's go ahead and do that. Sorry. This is why you do it dry. Take your washer, put it right down on in here. Make sure it sits flat. Take your spring, get that in there and force that in. It'll seat when you go to put everything together, but it's nice if you can get it in there now. There we go. Get that to seat all the way down on in there. Little pre-assembly of the parts there. Because now you got something to kind of grab with your fingers to drive that thing home. All right. Now we're going to put this down here. We're going to take our brake shoes, and we know that the shoes go on either side of those little arms I showed you. And these slide in between that part that spins and the wall of the hub here. You're going to have to fiddle with that with a screwdriver a little bit when you go ahead to assemble this next piece. This slides down in here. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm trying to get you to see this. I'll try. Okay, I apologize. I can't do this for you that way with the camera. It'll take forever. And I forgot to put the bearing on. It's okay. Again, you want to do this all dry so you can do everything I'm doing right now. So if you make a mistake and you forget something, that's okay. Once you get this together correctly and you test it, which we'll do, so you got to drop your bearing in there first. There we go. Again, I don't like doing it from this side specifically for this reason. So people smarter than me would have taken that off over there. I might end up doing that. Matter of fact, let's do that. Let me show you how to do that. Because it is better if you put it back together the other way. It's much more difficult to put it together from this side. So what we're going to do here is just take all these parts out. No big deal. Okay. So what I'm going to do, get my tape measure out here. It'll be the same dimension, pretty much. You can adjust it on the fly. It's about 1 inch is what I'm looking at here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have to put a pair of vice grips on the center of this axle. I should be using a larger set. Let's see if this works. You could do this in the center because it doesn't matter what happens to the threads in the center. All right. Now, maybe we can spin this off. Man. Oh my gosh, easier said than done. Let me work on that. Might need some heat. All right, that was really frozen on there. I had to really crank down on these vice grips. There we go. It really doesn't want to spin. Let's give her a little. Let's give her a little lubrication. By this point, you know, if you're in the same boat that I'm in and you make this decision, you should be pretty familiar with these pieces. You've been messing with them all day, right? Or for an hour or so, you've been cleaning them up. These are all drive side parts. Wow. All right. Now, we're going to put this outer nut on. And we're going to set this so it's from the tip of this axle to the face of the nut is 1 inch. Should be pretty close to center that way. All right, then comes the washer. Oh my God. We're gonna have a little bit of a problem. We're gonna have to feed some of these parts in from this side. I marred up the threads in the hey, this is good that it's on camera. Oh no, what do I do now, Mike? You told me to do this. Well, let's go back out. Let's go ahead and put the first threaded part on that we know we can feed from this brake arm side, which is this part here. Nothing else will be threading across the center of that axle. So just get that in pretty far. And now we have to reverse engineer everything. So we know that the dust cover goes on, and it's only going to fit on this thing in one way. And that's the way. And your coaster arm goes on here. Same thing. Now your washer. And now your outer nut. You'll see why it's easier to do it this way in a moment. Most of you watching are going, oh, I see. Because now, when I go to put these parts together, I can slide this over and I can get that to line right up where it's supposed to in those little spots in here. When I go to put everything together. It's going to be a lot easier. I am feeling a little bit of an issue here. Oh, okay. I got a little burr here that I'm going to want to take care of real quick. I got a file here. I have a wood file, and now I got a metal file. I got a bunch of them. Let's just grab this round one because I'm just going to remove that burr. There we go. Just wipe that off. Just make sure we got all that off of there. All right. Back to our tape measure. Looks pretty good. Gotta come in a little bit more. You know, I have fingernails. It's a thing, man. My fingernails grow it's crazy. And it's a thing with these rubber gloves because as I'm working it, they'll scratch through the rubber and then my nails will get filthy with grease. It's a hassle. It is what it is. All right. And here come the mosquitoes. We had a car blocking the driveway for hours today. I had to call the city to come out and deal with that, and that was not any fun. All right, so we've got this end assembled. Nut washer, brake arm, dust cover that locks into this piece here, which I don't know what this is called. It's a cone combination thing here. The bearing is going to go on like that, because that's going to end up fitting in this part of the wheel when we go to put it all together like that. We're not doing that yet, although we can. As a matter of fact, I think I am going to do that. That's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and put the bearing on here. It goes on in this manner. The bearings themselves face into the race that's built into, or the bearing cup rather, that's built into the hub. Big hole, little holes the drive side. So what we can do here is we can go ahead and fit this on here, and we can kind of place now the shoes. This is all going to kind of fall apart a little bit. Usually I put the shoes in there. I'm just going to attempt this. I never do it like this, but I'm going to give it a shot. All right, I'm going to fit this in here. Yeah, we're going to have to drop. There we go. Just want to wiggle this a little bit because it will seat. You got a magnet on the end of this. If you have to adjust this, adjust it. It's not a big deal. So I'm going to take I'm just lining everything up so I know that it'll fit in here. Drop this down right in there. And there it is. You're perfect. That's done. Now we're going to take this part here. Have that sitting up. We know that that threads into that part that's in there. Here's your bearings that go on in here. This piece here goes right over this and threads in. Next set of bearings right here. Now we screw this outer, which I didn't clean yet because I just took that off of there, but we'll go ahead and screw this cone nut with dust cover on this axle here. Yeah, so you really want to do everything from the drive side. Sorry if I misspoke earlier in the video. But again, don't worry, don't hold on to every word I'm saying here. All right, there we go. So I'll go ahead, I'll put it all together for you so you can see. See how much nicer it goes together now. Now we can double check this with the tape measure. And I'm almost on the money here. And that's close enough. Like a 1/16 of an inch off. Does not matter. Okay, now your next thing would be your dust cover. Again, you're just putting this back together the opposite as you took it apart. Then we're going to put the sprocket on. And that just fits in those grooves. Gonna, boom. And now the trick is getting your spring clip on. What I like to do is I like to find the split in the spring clip and put that between. I'll try to zoom in for you on this one. It's not going to be super tight, but good enough. So there's 3 little notches on here. I like to put the spring clip between 2 of them. And lay that down. Opposite end of the split in the spring clip, I want to put a screwdriver and lay it into that groove. I'll hold this down with my thumb, and I'm going to put that over like that. And we're done. Now we do a test. And if I hold the brake arm and I kick back on, there we go, it's stopped. So what I'm doing here is I'm letting the wheel spin, I'm holding onto the brake arm, and I'm kicking back the sprocket. You see that? That's working. Now you know you put it back together right. The hardest part of this whole job, after you get this done, is when you put it in the bicycle frame. Because underneath this nut here, I hope this is on camera, this is outer nut, there's this cone nut that has a flat side on both sides of it. And that adjustment is something that you've got to do when you put it on the wheel, when you put the wheel on the bike. When you bolt this on the frame, if you can grab the wheel and it wiggles, you got to tighten that cone nut. So you have to undo these outer nuts just enough to loosen this enough so you can get a wrench in here and tighten that down and then tighten this back up. And then when you got to spin the wheel, and there's this like fine tuning that you have to do where the wheel spins freely. You don't feel any binding with the bearings. Like if you lifted the bike up or put it upside down, you spun it, it's just going to spin for days. At the same time, you don't want any wiggle in here. So that's the most tedious part about mounting the wheel back to the bike afterwards. All right. So my next step now is to take this apart, lay it out in order again, put it back together with grease. And I'll try to do that for you, even if it's kind of like segmented or something here. Okay, I went ahead and sliced open that grease thing for the grease gun and filled this. There's still some grease in these halves, so we're going to use my fingers and clean most of that out to put this all back together. There is a thing back in the old days, the guys in Marin County, it was called the Repack, and it was Mount Tamalpais, and they would race down it. This was before they put gears on their clunkers. They were still running coaster brakes. So they truck them up and ride them down. And these hubs would get so hot, it would ruin the grease, and they'd have to repack the coaster brakes. So the race was called the Repack. All right? This grease, this red and tacky, you don't need to repack it after that. I've taken one of my bikes with this red and tacky grease down over 3 miles where I literally put bacon in tin foil and put it on the hub. It cooked the bacon inside that tin foil on the way down, and the brakes still worked fine. The grease still held up. Back in the old days, they didn't have grease this good, so they had to repack it. Now again, this is the coaster brake side. One of the first things I'm going to do is pack the inside of this with a bunch of grease. And don't be shy. Now I put way more grease in my coaster brakes than you need to. And what's going to happen is as you're riding this thing, grease is going to start coming out past the dust cover. So after you assemble this, every once in a while you'll see grease coming out around here. Just get a paper towel, kind of roll it up thin, put it in there between the frame and the hub here, and just run it through. You'll get all that grease off of there. It's just my thing. You don't have to do it this way. I've heard stories about a particular bike guy out here in LA that a lot of people know. I'm not going to give out his name. I like him fine. Some of my friends don't. It's fine. But I heard he'll take a finger with a little grease, stick it in there, and be like, that's enough. And he might be right. I don't know what he's probably basing that on, the fact that he's taken apart a lot of bikes and he never found a whole lot of grease in there. In the long run, grease doesn't cost that much money. So I don't mind overpacking it. That's just me. I also like to put grease inside the threads on this. They're going to pretty much get in there anyhow as you start putting stuff together. Coat the outside of this, doesn't really matter. You can get some grease in there on the spring. It doesn't matter. There's so much grease in there, it's going to work its way throughout all these parts. So this isn't very important. You want to put the bearings in. Now the bearings are important, but of course they're going to get grease. You're just going to take some grease here, more than enough. And we're going to run this inside the race here and just pack them. Spin this around and just keep packing that bearing with grease, or that race that has the bearings with the grease. I mix up my words all the time. Just get them in there real good. Just make sure that's full of grease. I'm going to go ahead and stick this inside here. It came kind of black because I didn't try to force the old grease out of the old bearings completely. Won't matter that much. It'll be fine. It'll all work. And actually, I forgot. I got to put this inside here first. Okay. If you want to, you can poke the grease that pokes through here right through. It's a messy job. There's no way around that. You want to put more grease in there? You feel like you just poked some out? Hey, put some more grease in there. I'm telling you, I packed the hell out of it. The problem here is when you do this, you want to make sure you're still going to be able to see what you're doing when it comes time to align those parts that you saw me do when it was dry. All right. Now I can put the bearing in. All right. When you use your coaster brake, as you apply it, it forces that little cone thing in there up against the... Oh, I fucked up again. Sorry for cursing. I got to put the brake shoes in there. Let's slide these suckers in there. Try to get the... When the grease is in, they'll kind of stay in place a little bit better. So this should make reassembling easier. Remember, those two little arms I pointed out on the top of that spring, the arms are going this way and the two brake shoes are on this side. Okay, with the grease in, it holds it all in place for you. So assembling this should be a little bit easier than when you tried to do it a moment ago when it was dry, because those parts were all just falling around. So all right, looks like I got to do it like this. There we are. So the grease helps to hold those parts in place. So you're golden right now. Now we're going to take this, we're going to spin it around. And from this side now, we know we've got this bearing. Again, because the grease is in there, it shouldn't just fall out on you. Let's go ahead and pack this bearing. Obviously, you should inspect all these parts when you clean them, because if you got broken parts, every once in a while you'll get a bearing where the chrome on the outside of the bearing is peeled away on you. You got to replace that bearing, which is not an easy thing. You can probably find a lot of these parts online. For me, I've taken apart so many different brakes, and Chinese brakes, and Japanese brakes, and German brakes. Your best coaster brake that you can still find today to make your life easier would be the red band, they call it. So that's a Schwinn used. It comes on the Schwinns. It's got a red band going in there. It's got Bendix. So it's the red band Bendix is what you want. That is a super heavy duty coaster brake. Okay, we're going to spin this into the other part that's in there. See all the grease squeeze out? We're going to wipe that off in a moment. Forgot to put the bearing in. That bearing's in there. Did I not put a bearing on this side? I forgot to put the bearings on the other side. You're going to do this, man. There we go. Just back in. Don't forget to put your bearings in. Too busy trying to film this for you guys. The point is, I don't have to show you all these steps. If you're trying to follow me right now, you're making a mistake already. The key to this is giving you confidence to do it. That's all this is. If you see me doing it, that means you could do it. Anybody could do this. Anybody could do this. The key is to do it the way I did it in the beginning, where you lay all your parts out in order. and then you figure it out. You dry fit everything exactly the way I showed you, and then you know. And now you don't have to be watching me anymore because you already know. This is how I got to do it. I've got to put these things together in that order. I watched Mike screw up. He put it in the wrong way. We got to all feed it all from the drive side. I'll just reiterate here. Always, always, always build the brake from this side. Meaning, get that side together first. Normally, you don't have to take it apart. The coaster brake, normally, it's very strange that it disassembled the way that it did, because in all the coaster brakes I've repacked, that's only happened 3 or 4 times. So it's kind of funny that it happened this time. Way more grease here than I need. You guys can see it coming out. The way I look at it, better safe than sorry. All right, this, like I said, this red grease is also cleaner. Like if you had your bare hands, it'll wipe off a lot easier. Now we're putting the cone, the little cone nut here that has the built-in dust cover on it. Again, this is your adjustment cone when you go to fit it on the bike. And I ran out of paper towels on this roll. I know I have more in the truck, so we're going to need those. I don't think about it anymore. I mean, I've done so many of these. I can't tell you. But I'll be honest with you, I didn't do this when I was a kid. This is something I taught myself how to do as an adult. You can get this pretty snug right now because there's enough grease. All right. So we've got that on there. There's a nut that's missing. There it is. This is your lock nut, basically. It's not a lock nut, but it's a little skinny nut that once that's snug up against that adjustment nut, you'll keep everything together. And there we go. Now, let me find some paper towels and I'll be right back with you. It's like a white one. We got enough here, maybe. Let's see, I got something here. I want to wipe this off. Keep in mind, I've told you already, this grease, as you ride the bike, is going to start coming out as you use it. Just on a regular basis, eyeball it and wipe away the grease. Eventually it's going to stop coming out, and that's when you know you got it perfect. When you assemble a new build, it's happened to me every time I've done it, the bottom bracket gets loose too. I mean, I got a technique for that. I've showed you guys. I think it's called Clunkin' Ain't Easy. That might be the build where I put a bike together for you and I kind of explained that. Like I have a little system. All right. Now the dust cover goes on. Now the sprocket. And now I could put the spring clip back on, which I showed you a few minutes ago. I'm going to find the split. It's right here. I'm going to put it between 2 of the notches and hold that down with my thumb. I'm going to stick this in the other underneath the spring and into the other notch. Clip that right on there. Clip this over. Boom. This brake is assembled. We'll do a quick test. I'm going to rotate this back. Boom. The wheel stops. I'm going to rotate this towards me. Wheel stops. That's a properly assembled coaster brake. The next thing, and like I said, when you put it in, you got to make sure it's just right when you put it back into the bicycle. All right, you're going to bolt everything together, and if this wheel wiggles, you have to loosen this up, tighten that cone nut, tighten this nut back down, tighten the outer nut up against the frame until you get that just right. It's tedious sometimes. Sometimes you get it the first time. But I'm bringing it up because some of you are going to go through that, and you're going to be like, I thought, I watched everything. I can't get it right. Why didn't he tell me this? Look, man, every time you do this, it's going to be different. your bike might not have the CBE-110 coaster brake on it, so your internals are going to look a little bit different. More often than not, there's going to be a difference in the way that you notice that that brake arm locks on. I've got, they're not here right here. My coaster brake parts are up on a shelf buried back there. I have a whole bin with coaster brake parts. And a lot of them are mismatched. I got a bunch of coaster brakes I've already rebuilt. I got a bunch of red band coaster brakes that I saved to build into rims that I need to do. I need to build some sets of wheels here. I'll tell you right now, this set of wheels, it's not a bad set. These are pretty thick spokes. They're stainless steel. It's a good hub, and it's a generic aluminum. I don't know if this is double-walled aluminum. It may be. Back then, even these generics were still double-walled on some of the better bikes. So this set of wheels on this bike, not going to be a problem. I'm going to go ahead and put it together and put a chain on it, and then maybe do a quick little ride on the bike and show that to you. I'm calling this bike, this build, the poor man's king sting, because that's what it looks like. I hope you enjoyed this so far. Don't go anywhere. It's not over. Alright, that's it for this video. Bike's not finished. I need to do a brake cable and rig the front brake to work. I might leave this lever on here. I might put a mountain bike lever on it. The grips are AME. They're in pretty good shape. Brake's perfect. Like I said, I got to take the bottom bracket apart and grease that. I got the proper bearing in here in the bearing cup, so there's no more play in the fork. And I'm probably going to list this up for a pretty decent price. I mean, decent for me. I want to make some money on it. This is, a lot of my time. Cost me money for parts, and it's a classic. Now, I'm joking around. I'm calling this the poor man's king sting. This video is not about the bike so much, really. I'm just adding this in here. It's about the coaster brake. That's what this video is. So that's it. And once I'm done with this completely and I got the cable run for the front brake and I know this thing is running perfect, I'll do another video on it. I'll do some shorts on it and I'll post all that stuff up. But today this was just about the coaster brake. I hope you guys dug it. Hope you appreciate it. And there it is. This is a 18 or 19 inch, depending on who you talk to, Schwinn varsity frame. The bars and stem came off of a Schwinn Sidewinder. The saddles from the varsity. The crankset is a GT. The wheels came off of an 80s. I have all black tires that I'm going to put on. I'm going to get rid of these white walls. So when I'm done, it's going to look cool. That's it for now. You guys have been hounding me for bicycle videos, and I hope this satisfies you. This is a bike, if I didn't have all the bikes that I have, I would keep this. As a matter of fact, I have what you call the Tennessee Schwinn. It's a cantilever frame. You've seen it on the channel before. That's been my commuter. Maybe I'll list that thing for sale. Swap some things around on it. Maybe I'll use this as a commuter for myself for a little while. I don't know. It's always a thing. I build the bike, I end up liking it, and then I end up selling it right away. I've built so many beautiful bikes over the years that I really built for myself, and then I put it up to list it, thinking it'll be a while before it sells so I can enjoy it. But the bike was so cool, other people recognized it, and they bought it before I could even enjoy the thing. So I guess I'll play this one by ear. Maybe what I'll do is when I'm ready on this, when it's built and dialed, I'll take it to the beach, ride it around and get some pictures and shoot some film of it there. I got to tell you, I put the wheel in. I did not have to adjust that cone nut at all. Went in and it's perfect. I've got no side-to-side play. And that thing's spinning nicely. So that's what you want. That's what you want. That's it. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Be good to one another. I'll catch you in the next one. I got to clean up this mess. And then it won't happen today. I guess tomorrow I'll start my woodworking. I've got to mill up some lumber for some things and some projects I'm going to do here in the shape for sale. I'm going to do here in the shop for sale. So stay tuned on that. And actually I have to call somebody right now. I do have a project it looks like I'm going to start doing. I'll know more when I get off the phone with her. Thanks again for being here. Tell your friends. Come back often. Be kind to one another. I'll catch you in the next one.